Hi, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com. Today we're going to make a raspberry truffle tart, and this is what it looks like. This tart starts with a graham cracker crust, and then we're going to fill it with a truffle filling, and that's made with chocolate and cream, and then we're going to add some raspberry sauce to give it a nice raspberry flavor, and then you can decorate the top with some fresh raspberries. So the first thing that you will need to do is to preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 180 degrees Celsius. And then we will need a 9-inch, that's 23 centimeter, tart pan with a removable bottom. If you don't have a tart pan, you could also use a 9-inch springform pan with a removable bottom. That's just as good. And then you can either butter your tart pan, or I'm just going to spray it. And I'm just going to wipe off the excess there. And then I like to put my tart pan on a larger baking sheet. Just makes it easier to pick it up and put it into the oven. So for our graham cracker crust, you will need 1.5 cups, which is 150 grams of graham cracker crumbs. Now you can buy graham cracker crumbs in a box, but my preference is to use the whole graham crackers and then crush them. I don't know why, I think the flavor's better. So you will need about 10 graham crackers for this, for 1.5 cups. Now, I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to use digestive biscuits. The texture is very similar to a graham cracker, but just between you and me, I think they taste way better. So that's what I'm going to use today. So if you live in the States, of course you can buy them online. Specialty food stores always seem to carry them, and I find my local grocery store carries them. But if they have an international aisle, which most grocery stores do, you will find it in the British section because this is a British biscuit. So you will need, for about 1.5 cups, you will need about 10 of these. Now, to crush them, you do it a couple different ways. I'm going to do it in the food processor, but if you don't have a food processor, just take a bag and put them in there, and then you could use a rolling pin, or if you have one of these handy meat pounders, just put it in there. I'll show you. I'll do a graham cracker since I'm not using those, and then just until they're crushed. So, like I said, I'm going to take the lazy man's way. So I'm just going to loosely break up my, like I said, you need about 10. If you want your crust a little sweeter, you could add a tablespoon of, or about 15 grams of granulated white sugar. I'm going to leave mine no sugar. So I'm just going to process this until they're finely ground. Okay, we are done. So if you were doing this by hand, like you just put it in a bowl, and then you're going to just mix your butter in and stir it together. Easy enough. So now I'm going to add somewhere between 5 to 6 tablespoons of melted butter. So that's about 70 to about 84 grams of melted butter. It can, depending on how fresh either your graham crackers or your digestive biscuits, you may need 5 or the 6 tablespoons. That's why I like to little leeway there. So I'm going to add most of it. Whoop. And get that. If you kind of take a little, and you want it to hold together, so I'm just going to add just a little more, because that's about right. Okay, so of all the pastry crusts that you can make, this is by far the simplest. So I use it when I can. And it is just, the graininess of this goes so perfectly with the smooth and creamy truffle filling. So now we are just going to, I'm just going to press this into the bottom and up the sides. So if you were using a springform pan, then just press your crumb mixture up about maybe an inch, 2.5 centimeters up the sides of your pan. Okay. And I'm just going to use my fingers to do this. You could use a spoon or a spatula, offset spatula, but so I do the sides first. And then once you press it in, then just kind of, I take my finger and just try to get it, you know, as even as you can. And then just press it over the bottom. Okay, that looks pretty good. Just make sure you press it down pretty firm. So now there is 2 ways actually to set a graham cracker crust or a digestive biscuit crust. You could chill it in the refrigerator, but for this tart, I want this to be set like really firm. So that's why we're going to bake it. Normally you would bake it 8 to 10 minutes, just until it's set, and there's a little bit of color, but mainly it'll be dry looking and set. So I'm going to say 8 to 10 minutes. Okay, so our crust is baked. You can see it's dried out. It's taken on a little bit of color. So now just put your pan on a wire rack, and now we have to let this cool down completely to room temperature before we add our truffle filling. But meanwhile, we will make our raspberry sauce. So you will need 5 ounces, which is 140 grams of raspberries. You could use fresh. I like to use frozen. The reason I use frozen is, 1, I can get them all year round, and 2, I know that the quality is always really good. If you go and you buy fresh raspberries, especially if you're going like to the grocery store in those little plastic containers, they may look gorgeous, but sometimes, I don't know whether you found that, you eat them and there's like no taste to them. But if I use frozen, I know they are really good, so that's why I do that. So you will need, like I said, 5 ounces, 140 grams of frozen. So just put them in a strainer and let them thaw out over a bowl, of course. And so once they get like really soft, like this, then we want to just take a spoon and press to release all the juices. Now we're going to need 1/4 cup of raspberry sauce, which is 60 mils, 60 grams. So that's why I'm using this amount. You know, typically frozen raspberries come in a 10-ounce bag, which is, what is that, 280 grams? So you could make the whole bag, which is typically what I do, and then, because I love raspberry sauce, with this tart. And also, what you can do is raspberry sauce stores really well in the fridge for about a week, and you can even freeze it for about 6 months. So if you want to make extra, go ahead. I do. So once you press and get all your juice, which I'm not going to make you watch me do that. So just say I had pressed all until there's just seeds left. Then what I'm going to do is add 2 tablespoons, 30 grams of granulated white sugar, which I'll do. It might sound like quite a bit of sugar for this, but you know, raspberries are quite tart. And then once you stir that in, you can taste it. And if you go a little tart, you could add a little more sugar. So that's what you do for your raspberry sauce. Like I said, you need 1/4 cup for our truffle filling, 60 milliliters. And like I said, you could make this up to a week in advance and just have it in the fridge. So what we're going to do, I've done that. So I'm going to let that cool down to room temperature. And then when we come back, we will make our truffle filling. So our graham cracker crust is cooled down completely, so we can start our truffle filling. A truffle filling is really a chocolate ganache, which is simply a mixture of chocolate and cream. And then we're going to flavor it with our raspberry sauce. So you will need, in a heat-proof bowl, 8 ounces, which is 240 grams of, now you can use either a semi-sweet or a bittersweet chocolate. And you want to finely chop it like I've done here. Now, when you go to the grocery store, you can usually find your chocolate either on the baking aisle, or what I normally do is like the candy section, you can find chocolate bars. That's what I'm using here. You can use, like I said, a semi-sweet to a bittersweet. So what I like to use is somewhere between a 58% to a 70% cocoa content. Usually now, chocolate, it says right on the like a chocolate bar, or even in on your baking aisle, like chocolate chips, it says what the percentage is. If you use I'm using actually like a 70%, which a bittersweet. That will set up a little firmer than, say, if you use a semi-sweet. Both of them will set firm, but, you know, just to let you know, if higher the cocoa butter, the firmer it will set. So make sure you finely chop. And again, with chocolate, this is so important. Your truffle filling is going to taste like chocolate. So use a chocolate you enjoy. If you don't like a bittersweet, then don't use a bittersweet because you'll find it too bitter, you know. So taste it, use one that you really like. Now, we're going to add cream to our chocolate. You will need 3/4 cup, which is 180 milliliters or grams. Now, you want to use heavy whipping cream. It's sometimes listed heavy cream or heavy whipping cream. And that's cream with a 35 to 40% butterfat content. Again, we need the heavy cream. We need that fat to set up our filling. So you can't use a light cream. No. I know people ask me. No, you can't. So now we're going to heat this up till it's really hot. Okay, you can start to see the bubbles, and I'll just let it go a little more. Okay, and take it off the heat. So now what I'm going to do is just pour this over our chocolate, and that hot cream is going to melt our chocolate. So I'm just going to get all the, and I'm going to let this sit for a couple minutes, so just so it can start to melt the chocolate. Okay, so now I think we're about ready. So I'm using a wire whisk. You could just use like a spoon. And we don't want to incorporate a lot of air into our ganache. We just want to get the chocolate and the cream mixed together. So I'm starting in the center, little circles. You could use a spatula as well for this. And as you can see, it's starting to mix together. So we can kind of make our circles bigger. Now sometimes if you maybe didn't chop your chocolate finely enough, or if your cream wasn't really hot, if you have, like, you get to this point and you find your chocolate it's not nice and smooth, like there is still chunks of chocolate, what you could do is just pop your bowl, that's why it's nice to use, say, glass, in the microwave for just a few seconds to heat it up, or you could put it over a saucepan of simmering water if that was a problem. But it shouldn't be. Like I said, if you chop your chocolate finely and you heat that cream hot enough. So there we have it. Isn't that gorgeous? I can just smell it. Now, remember we have our 1/4 cup, which is 60 milliliters of raspberry sauce. If you did make your raspberry sauce ahead of time and had it in the refrigerator, make sure it's at room temperature. We don't want to be putting our cold raspberry sauce into our ganache. This doesn't give you a strong raspberry flavor, just a nice subtle. I really like it. And as you can see, this is not, I mean, we're done here. This is an easy dessert. And you know, especially like if you're having a dinner party, because it's quite rich, you can serve it in small slices. So one tart will feed, I would say, you know, 10 to 14 people, depending on the size of the slice you want to give. But really nice, quick, easy. You can make it ahead of time because it can sit in the refrigerator for quite a few days. So now, what I'm going to do is just pour this in. Simple enough. Slapped on myself there. And then I'm just going to take a spatula, just gently. And that's it. And now we just have to chill it. So, gently shake the pan, even it out. Doesn't that look gorgeous? Oh, I love chocolate. What can I say? Now, you want to put this into the refrigerator. You don't want to cover it until it's like completely set. I would say, you know, 6, 8 hours. You want this to firm up. My personal preference, well, you can take it out of the pan if you want in 6 to 8 hours. It does benefit from being in the refrigerator overnight, at least overnight, because chocolate, I find, when you first make, like, say, ganache, it is very sharp. And it takes time for that chocolate and the cream to kind of blend and mellow out, and then you can really, the flavor of the chocolate really comes out. So I do encourage you to make it, you can make it ahead of time, but give it at least a day in the refrigerator before you, you cut into it. So like I said, I'm gonna put it in the fridge at least 6 to 8 hours to let that set up, and then when we come back, we will take out of the pan and try a piece. So our raspberry truffle tart has now chilled completely. So we want to take the sides off. So take your, you can see my fingers in the center, and I go around and gently press up on the center. And then what I like to do is have an upside down glass, put my tart there, and the sides should just fall away like that. And then just lift it up and put it on your serving plate. Okay. Now, when I'm cutting this, I like to have a glass of hot water, and then I take my knife, put into the hot water, and then it off, make a cut. And then every time, because the knife has lots of chocolate on it, I put it in the glass, rinse it off so I can get a nice clean cut. Just going to make sure I got all the way down to the plate. That's good. think we're good. That's a bit of crust there. So just get your knife in between. Okay, there we go. And have my plate. There we go. Oh, you know, you could dust the entire top of the tart with some unsweetened cocoa powder. That looks nice. Although it looks, I like the look of the shiny chocolate. You could decorate. If you want to just leave it like that, I like it just very simple, elegant. You could put some raspberries. The reason I like to put, like, say, some fresh raspberries on the tart, that way people know when they look, oh, this must be raspberry flavor. So you could put it like that. Or if you had lots of fresh raspberries, put them all around the outside. But I think that's just very simple, like that. You could serve this again with some fresh raspberries. If you made extra raspberry sauce, you could let people take a little raspberry sauce. Whipped cream, I'm a fan of whipped cream because this is very rich, so a little bit of whipped cream never hurt anybody, as I say. So I don't know, I just love the look of that, and I know I love the taste of it, but let's try some. Savor that chocolate. It is like eating a big truffle, chocolate truffle. The chocolate, it's smooth, it's creamy. Just let it sit on the tongue. It's just silky smooth. And then what I like, the contrast of the graininess of the crust. I think those two together is wonderful. You know, serve in small slices. It's like, you know, normally you have a little truffle and usually one is enough. So think of that way. I would probably, I mean, I know I took a big slice here. I would probably do half of that because it's very rich and you don't need a lot to enjoy. Like I said, you can make it ahead, store it in the refrigerator for, I don't know, quite a few days if it lasts that long. So you must try this. And until next time, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of JoyBaking.com.